Hi again, I'm Randy Patterson. Click subscribe if you like this channel. Today I'm going to talk about motivation and how we get ourselves to do the things that move us forward in life, like getting a career or finding a partner or using your true talents and skills. All the stuff you constantly hear inspirational speakers talking about. But I'll also be talking about the smaller steps along the way, things that are part of the path but not the big destination. Getting an entry-level job, exercising, eating right, turning off the computer, cutting back on gaming, or alcohol, or gambling, or YouTube, learning to cook, cleaning up our place, all the standard responsibilities of adulthood. Why do we do that stuff? And I'm going to focus on two types of motivation: intrinsic motivation and adaptive motivation. And in the spirit of my book, How to Be Miserable in Your 20s, I'll talk about it in the context of a young adult moving forward and onward in their independence. As you know, there are lots of people in their 20s who feel kind of stuck in this process, stalled out on the road to their own adult lives. They're frustrated, and their family is frustrated too. Okay. First, intrinsic motivation. As you might guess, intrinsic motivation is supposed to come from within. It's our internal drive, our vision, our determination to reach out and grasp the future, even if nothing is forcing us to do that. It's our passion, if we have any. When we hear about motivation, it's almost always this kind that we're talking about it. And we talk about it because it's often missing in action. People are waiting around for it. I'll get moving and I'll take courses or look for a job and figure out my finances and start saving and start on that pile of paperwork on my desk when that internal fire gets lit. And unfortunately, it hasn't been lit in quite some time. We've been looking for the FedEx truck coming to deliver our internal drive, and it hasn't arrived. Sometimes it's been months. Sometimes it's been over a decade. For some of us, at some periods in our lives, that internal drive, that fire in the belly, just doesn't seem to be there. Maybe it's being held back by fear or a lack of confidence, or maybe they're trying to get charged up about something that's frankly pretty hard to get charged up about, an entry-level job, for example. When parents come to see me, they're often worried about their young adult. They've been nagging and pushing and trying to motivate him, maybe trying to scare him into motivation or shame him into it. Look at your friends, they're moving forward, life is passing you by. And they look at me. When is he going to get motivated? How is that going to happen? Well, my usual answer is, he's not. It's not going to happen. You've been waiting 10 years. Even FedEx Ground would have got it here by now. The reason I know this is that most people don't get it. There's the odd person who will pick up a violin because they're desperate for it, or they'll go get a job at the grocery store because they love buggy corrals or something. But that's not how most people get started. Even if you have that passion in one area of your life, like maybe you really want a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or you're desperate to learn the drums. In other areas of your life, you probably don't have it. And there are some areas of life where almost nobody really has any fire. Becoming financially responsible, dealing with a backlog of emails, cleaning up a messy house. If I'm waiting for this stuff to be more interesting than Netflix, it isn't ever going to happen. So what's that other kind? Adaptive motivation. Well, adaptive motivation means a drive that arises because of some kind of external circumstance. It's usually a sense of something lacking. I don't have any food in the kitchen, so I'm motivated to get out to the store and buy some. I don't have money to pay my Wi-Fi bill, so I'm motivated to earn some money so I don't get cut off. I don't have anything to wear, so I'm motivated to do the laundry. And this kind of motivation is much more automatic than intrinsic motivation, and it's usually more powerful. If you're in the desert and you're thirsty, the search for water is really motivating. You don't have to charge yourself up. You don't have to watch inspirational videos to go looking for water. It's automatic. And you can think of this motivation as being summed up by two words. So that. Why am I doing this? So that I can afford to go to the pub. So that I can feed myself. So that I have something to wear tomorrow. So that my car starts running again. The motivation is not coming from the thing itself, charging me up, self-actualizing my great vision for life. Not completely anyway. It's coming from what that thing will get me. I'll give you two examples from my own life. First, when I was 18, I worked in a marine equipment warehouse, shipping out anchors and hardware and paint and stuff. And let me tell you, it wasn't that intrinsically thrilling. If you had told me, look, you can work at this place 8 hours a day and make this amount of money, or you can not do that and you can have the same amount of money, what would I have done? I'll take the couch, thanks. I have no intrinsic desire to figure out how to wrap a porta potty. I worked there so that I could go out with friends, so that I could buy my own stuff, so that eventually I could move out. If there wasn't any so that, I wouldn't have done it. Ultimately, it wasn't all cost. It helped me. I saw how a business worked. I developed work habits that I needed. I learned how to follow instructions. And if you want a porta potty, I know how to wrap it. But I would never have done any of that if there wasn't a so that. Second example. I knew I wanted to get a degree in psychology. That, for me, was intrinsic. And at my school, they demanded you have 2 semesters of calculus in order to specialize in psychology. God knows why. I didn't think I'd ever use it. And you know what? I didn't. There is 0 probability that I would have studied calculus if I didn't have to. I did it so that I could get into psychology, which I did want. So I got through it. Some courses I took out of pure interest. Some of those paid off later in unexpected ways. But I didn't really have a so that in mind when I took them. Calculus, though, it was just about being able to say that I got through calculus. When we think about the things we do in our late teens and pretty much throughout our 20s, a huge amount of it just has to get done. We don't have intrinsic motivation pulling us forward. A job in a warehouse is really useful. But what gets me to apply is the so that. Adapting to the needs around me. I need money, here's a job. I need food, there's the grocery store. The garbage stinks, there's the dumpster. But we spend a huge amount of time in early life learning about how all of that is it's a bad kind of motivation. Your drive is supposed to come from within. We're supposed to have a great burning passion to get the oil changed in the car, or pay our bills, or write up a resume, or move into some crappy basement apartment that's nowhere near as nice as the house my parents can afford. But we really do people a disservice with this. They can actually feel bad for doing things because they need to, not because they want to. But the nature of existence is that at least half of what you do is adaptive. The motivation comes from lack. This is, to some extent, a problem of privileged cultures. If you're really poor, if you're a refugee, if you're in a war zone, if you're in the middle of a natural disaster, you're not sitting around asking, now, what do I really feel like doing? What would be a true expression of who I am in this moment? You don't need to, because that's not where the motivation comes from. There's a tidal wave coming. Run. So what's that got to do with delayed transition to adulthood? In a lot of families, the parents are spending huge amounts of effort removing all of their young adults' motivation to move forward. If they go out and get an entry-level job, they'll earn some money and get a bunch of skills in the process, which they're not really thinking about. If they don't take that job, the parents will give them the same amount of money. So the only way you can get yourself to work in a warehouse wrapping porta potties is if that's your passion. Listen, that's nobody's passion. There are almost no early career jobs that are somebody's passion. That's not what early career jobs are about. They're about building skills and so on. I remember a parent saying his son wouldn't come to the dining table for meals. So the parents made up meal trays and they took them to his room. So if he came and ate with the family, he got a meal and probably some unwanted advice along with it, and maybe a request that he do the dishes. And if he didn't come to the table, he got exactly the same meal as room service with no hassles. And the parent asked me why his kid would be like this. Why would he do this? And I said, because he can. Another set of parents bought their son a car, and he really didn't take care of it, and eventually the car was totaled. And the parents' response was to buy him a newer model, a better car. And his parents were like, why isn't he more responsible with his things? And my question was, why would he be? Parents are systematically taking away all of the adaptive motivation. And then they wonder why their young adult has no motivation. Well, you just took it. Adaptive motivation is the only reason most of us do a lot of the stuff in our lives. It's why we take courses. It's why we take entry-level jobs. It's why we clean stuff up. It's why we maintain our bike or car. It's why we treat other people with respect. It's why we pay our cell phone bill. It's why we avoid parking in loading zones. Because if we don't, bad stuff happens. It's adaptive motivation. And if we're lucky, we'll find something in our lives that has intrinsic motivation. Yo-Yo Ma probably has intrinsic motivation to play the cello. He likes it. He wants to do it. He'd do it if nobody paid him. But I bet many of the things in his life aren't like that. If he didn't have to change the oil in his car, he probably wouldn't. If he didn't have to exercise in order to stay in shape for his concerts, he probably wouldn't. If he didn't have to keep an eye on the finances now and then, he probably wouldn't do that either. Even if you find your passion, it will not be universal. Most of your life will still be governed by adaptive motivation. It's how things happen. It's why you drink water. It's why you eat food. It's why you seek out your friends. It's why you pay bills. It's why you call people back. It's why you go shopping. It's why you wear pants. It's why we grow up. It's why we become adults. It's why we build a bigger life for ourselves. And even though we did it because we had to, we will look back at most of these things and we'll be glad we did. Thanks for watching. If you like these videos, consider subscribing. And if the challenges of life in early adulthood are of interest to you, take a look at my book, How to Be Miserable in Your 20s. See you again.